Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Robin Dunbar from Grid Metals. Robin, good afternoon and congratulations on your $10 million earn-in agreement. Let's start there.
Sure. Yeah, that's in addition to our cesium project at Falcon West, we do have a considerable base metal portfolio. We have a couple of resources, open pit resources in southeast Manitoba, and one part of that project is joint ventured with Teck. They're spending some money, and we have some licenses up in northern Manitoba, so east of Thompson, and we just signed an agreement, earning an agreement with the Boliden Group out of Sweden. They're a Swedish multinational integrated producer, so they'll put in to earn 80% minimum of 10 million. It could be a lot more based on the structure of the deal, and we'll get some fees for operating the project, and look at a really interesting area that just hasn't seen much exploration. So yeah, it's a good deal for us, and gives shareholders another opportunity to have success with Grid.
And of course, for everybody who's following Grid, you can't say Grid without saying cesium, correct?
That's where we're focused. It's a tremendously interesting metal, and very, very rare globally. There's only been 3 deposits that have ever produced. There's 2 other juniors that have cesium resources that are under development. We will be publishing our resource at some point later this year, mineral resource estimate, and we hope to catapult into the #2 position globally in terms of resource. And it's a very exciting metal, very lot of strategic uses, very valuable, and it's a sector that frankly needs more Western ownership. So we've really focused on Cesium, our Falcon West project, and are trying to get a resource and bring that deposit into production as soon as we possibly can.
And for those of you following military metals, then you understand what cesium is. Perhaps you'd like to add a few more lines on what cesium actually is, because I can't get Jack Lipton over at Investor.News to stop talking about night goggle and night goggle vision and why you need cesium.
Yeah, it's used in optical applications, so it's really the premier product. So when the military fires flares and you need the night vision goggles, use cesium, and it's creates the best possible outcome. So that's pretty important. And then there's uses in atomic clocks, positioning, high-tech electronics, and other medical isotopes, and also the main market currently is for cesium formate, which is used in drilling offshore oil wells. So it's a very important metal that I think, frankly, would find more uses and adaptations if the world could find more of it. So we can see a period of number of years here where any new supply will take time to come on. So there's a real opportunity for a company that can bring a new source of cesium to market.
And of course, this is all anchored around a project called Falcon West in Manitoba.
That's right. We just started drilling in earnest in October. We did 135 drill holes. We're drilling a small area near surface, intercepts the cesium, like no more than about 40 meters at depth. And then the location of the project, it's just off the Trans-Canada Highway, about 500 meters, about an hour east of Winnipeg. The other really fascinating thing about cesium is to process it. You don't need tailings or extensive infrastructure. What you do is you mine the rock, you crush it, and then you put it through an ore sorter, and that creates a concentrate. So it's a totally dry process. and that product is super high value and can be sold anywhere in the world. So it's got a really combination of unique attributes in terms of a development project. It's more like a quarry than a mine. It's relatively small scale, but the flip side is it can be brought to production relatively quickly and for extremely low capital cost.
Well, let me ask you, Robin, why is this so hard to find?
Well, geologically, it's found in LCT pegmatites, which stands for lithium, cesium, tantalum. And of all the thousands of pegmatites in the world, only a few have cesium in a mineral called pollucite, which is what you're looking for. And pollucite is found in the most fractionated pegmatites. So when these things crystallize, it's the most highly evolved, and it's just a process that's rare geologically. Um, so I think it's safe to say that many hundreds of pegmatites have been analyzed in detail for cesium content in the last couple of years, particularly when lithium went down, and only a very, very small number have pollucite in drill core. And even when for example, when we're drilling at Falcon, we'll drill a hole and drill 5 meters away, and it won't be there, and then it'll reappear. So it's just one of those things that is very fickle and hard to find. So when you do come across it, it's a real opportunity. We're looking for pegmatites in southeast Manitoba, and we noticed there was some cesium. We didn't know how much, and we spent some considerable dollars drilling, and fortunately, it really looks like this occurrence is holding together. I can't call it a deposit because we don't have a mineral resource estimate, but we think it's definitely hanging together, and we have a coherent zone, and we'll send it all the data out very soon to get a mineral resource estimate complete.
Speaking of Falcon West, earlier this year you announced that you had also had expanded your mineralization. Many people out there are not geologists; they may not understand what this means. Can you also elaborate a little bit more on this?
Yeah, I mean, we're still in a relatively small footprint, and we don't really know where this pegmatite goes. So the mineralization is hosted in a pegmatite, which is about 10 meters wide, and in the middle of it, about 5 meters, has cesium, lithium, and some tantalum. And we're right now just following the extent of the mineralization, drilling very close space holes. We've along strike, we're about 120 meters right now, but as I said, it's flat lying. So as it starts to go to depth, we would transition into mining would be by underground method. So certainly for this phase, we're looking at finding the material that we could take out by open pit extraction. And despite the large number of holes that we've done, the mineralization it appears to be continuing. So in our next phases of drilling, we'll investigate that. So that's pretty exciting because we have a very large property. It's very early days in the exploration cycle. We've concentrated on trying to put together a resource, initial resource, but there's lots of exploration to be done. So one thing at a time. First things first is get an initial resource estimate and find out can we extract that to make some money, and that would certainly assist in future exploration efforts, which in my view are going to continue for years.
We always tell everybody at Investor.News to do their due diligence, and we always recommend that you check out the background of management. Now, you have a stellar background, Robin. What caused you to get involved in cesium?
Well, it's really the combination of factors. The value, the scarcity, the demand, the path to potential production is kind of unprecedented in minerals, where many new projects in gold and base metals, depending on the jurisdiction, can take 10 years or more. So we see the opportunity to find something that is very, very rare. Not many people have or companies have that can be developed, in our view, relatively quickly. So it's a unique combination of factors, and it's just that kind of really boils down to a really interesting opportunity for a critical metal that the West needs. There really is a lack of supply right now, so you put them all together, and it's a unique opportunity. We have, as I said, pretty significant base metal assets that we'd like to develop in the future. But again, the cesium is unique, and it's we've been able to progress it quite quickly using minimal exploration dollars, relative to many other projects. So yeah, we just in our experience, we think it's a great opportunity for shareholders, and we're going to see where it goes.
And for those of you who are rare earth bugs like myself, we've all been tracking Konstantin Karanopoulos's career for the last, I don't know, at least 15, 20 years. And after he retired from Neo Performance Materials, the only board in the world he joined was yours. Can I ask why a rare earth, player like Konstantin would join your board of directors?
Yeah, I mean, Konstantin has obviously done extremely well. He's a very accomplished individual. I think like a lot of people in the mining sector, it's a fascinating business, and to a certain extent, he wants to keep his hand in the game. And he's been a fantastic addition to the board, and I think he really appreciates the opportunity that we have at Grid with Falcon West and some other assets. So we're very fortunate to have him, and he's contributing a lot to our company.
So we're expecting a resource to come in sometime soon. What else should shareholders be looking forward to in the next quarter or two?
Yeah, so in terms of the resource, we're hoping in the Q3 of this year. We still have about 50 drill holes to be released from our drilling that was wrapped up in March, and we're starting a number of activities. First Nation engagement, network, really kind of all aspects, relating to the, development of the project. So we'll be announcing, activities relating to that in the next few months. And, from time to time, we'll have updates on our base metal activities as well. So, I mean, there's a lot going on in the company, and, we are focused on moving things ahead as quickly as possible and keeping our shareholders informed.
Well, of course, you're going to be speaking at the CMI Summit 5 on May 13th, 14th. Can you tell us anything about what you're going to be presenting about?
Yeah, like we certainly want to bring the everybody up to date on our activities, but we also want to give some color as to the developments in the cesium market itself and how we see that developing. We have some very qualified advisors helping us out, and we will want to access that and give people some more insight as to the opportunity in the cesium world.
Well, for those of you out there interested in following Grid Metals like the rest of us are, please go to the following website. And Robin, as always, it is such a pleasure to get an update. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy.